Good morning. We are starting our Monday off on a very important topic, so I thank all of you for being here today. Members of the Security Council, permanent representatives and observers, regional organizations, and others, thank you for coming together to discuss the electoral process in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In particular, I'd like to thank Côte d'Ivoire, Equatorial Guinea, France, the Netherlands, Sweden, and the United Kingdom for co-hosting this event. Your presence here demonstrates the importance the Security Council places on this issue. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to His Excellency Leonard Shea Okuntundo. I hope I didn't mess that up. Welcome. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. This morning we will hear from our briefers who have a deep knowledge of the DRC and DRC elections. We thank you for being with us today. Your participation highlights a sincere desire by the international community to ensuring not only that elections take place on December 23, 2018, but also that the elections reflect the will of the Congolese people. It is a pleasure to welcome Jean-Pierre Lacroix, Undersecretary General for Peacekeeping, who will provide us with the briefing on MONUSCO's role in the DRC today. We appreciate the opportunity to hear from the President of the DRC's Independent Electoral Commission, Mr. Corneille Nangaa. He will update us on the CENI's work to advance elections and meet benchmarks. We are grateful for the presence of Ida Sawyer from Human Rights Watch. Ida has been a strong, consistent voice calling for an environment that protects the rights of Congolese citizens and allows for free, fair, and transparent elections. And finally, we welcome Rushdi Nakardian, the African Regional Director for the International Foundation of Electoral Systems. To our panelists, we are entirely grateful for the time that you have taken to be with us today. Your knowledge provides us with the critical insight on the election planning, benchmarks, and political space needed in the DRC. I will now give the floor to Undersecretary General Lacroix.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Haley. Excellencies, good morning. I welcome this opportunity to assess progress towards the holding of elections in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and examine how all of us, regional, international, and bilateral partners working hand in hand, can help the country hold credible, free, and fair polls in the coming months. As the Secretary General has stated, while elections remain the responsibility of the national authorities of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, their success rests in great part on the coordinated and effective support of all partners. With less than a year to go before these crucial polls, today's meeting provides a valuable opportunity to take stock of progress to date and identify the remaining challenges that need to be overcome in the weeks and months ahead. My remarks will focus primarily on the status of electoral preparations in the DRC and MONUSCO's role in supporting them. Before doing so, it would be important to say a few words about the political, human rights, and security context in which the process is currently unfolding. As you are aware, the political climate in the Democratic Republic of the Congo continues to be marked by deep divergences over the implementation of the 31st of December 2016 agreement. While the majorité présidentielle, the presidential majority, and most leaders of the opposition recognize the agreement as the only path out of the current political impasse, they remain at odds over key issues related to its implementation, and there is little constructive dialogue between them. In recent weeks, the Comité Laïque de Coordination, CLC, a group of Catholic activists, has been calling for nationwide demonstrations to demand the full implementation of the 31st of December agreement. On both occasions, 31st of December 2017 and 21st of January 2018, these demonstrations resulted in clashes with security forces during which at least 15 people were killed, while dozens were wounded and hundreds were arrested. These troubling events have been accompanied by an escalation in rhetoric between the government and the leadership of the Catholic Church in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In the meantime, the human rights situation continues to worsen, and the number of allegations of violations related to democratic space continues to rise. In 2017, these allegations increased by nearly 25% compared to 2016, according to an annual analysis issued by MONUSCO and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in early January. These allegations mainly involve arbitrary arrests and detentions and violations of the rights of to freedom of opinion, expression, and peaceful assembly. The alleged perpetrators are mainly members of the security forces, and their targets are human rights defenders, political opponents, and journalists. Unfortunately, in most cases, these perpetrators continue to enjoy impunity with no significant investigation, follow-up, or convictions. Lastly, the security situation remains equally challenging. In parts of North Kivu, clashes between armed groups and the Forces Armées de la République démocratique du Congo, FARDC, have recently taken place almost daily, causing deaths among civilians and combatants. In Ituri province, tensions between Hema and Lundu communities have recently resurfaced, prompting fears of resurgence of another major conflict. Excellencies, against this backdrop, there has been some measure of progress towards the holding of elections following the issuance by the Commission Nationale Électorale Indépendante, CENI, of the long-awaited electoral calendar, which calls for the holding of presidential and legislative elections on the 23rd of December 2018. On the 24th of December 2017, President Joseph Kabila promulgated the amended electoral law. On the 21st of January, at the press conference in Kinshasa, the president of the CENI announced the conclusion of the update of the voter registry across the country, a process which started in September 2016. According to the CENI, over 46 million potential voters have been registered across the Democratic Republic of the Congo's 26 provinces. Among those registered, 47% are women. While much remains to be done, including the registration of Congolese living abroad, this is an important milestone. As mandated by the Security Council, MONUSCO has provided logistical and technical assistance to the CENI during the registration process. The mission has transported nearly 4,000 tons of electoral material from 18 hubs to 107 locations across the country. It has provided 64,000 liters of fuel to the Commission and used its aircraft in support to the CENI. The mission has also provided technical advisory to the CENI for the voter registration through its electoral division, diversified expertise deployed in the CENI at the national and local level in areas such as information and communication, technical training, civic education, gender, communication, and operations. The technical team has also helped the CENI with the planning, implementation, and monitoring of its activities. In addition to its technical and logistical support, MONUSCO, along with its partners, including the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and in coordination with the CENI, continues to contribute to the full implementation of the 31st of December agreement and has used its good offices to encourage all stakeholders to remain engaged with the political process. Despite these advances, critical challenges persist in ensuring the timely holding of peaceful and credible elections. Progress in the implementation of the confidence-building measures stipulated in the 31st of December agreement has been slow and remains incomplete. The government is yet to take adequate steps to fully open political space and create an environment conducive to the holding of credible, free, fair, and transparent elections. Over the past 12 months, demonstrations by opposition political parties and civil society groups have been prevented or repressed by security forces, at times with the use of deadly force. While 25 political prisoners have recently been released, at least 90 others remain in detention. This situation is fueling renewed political instability, threatening the progress made in recent months on the technical preparations, and risks exacerbating an already difficult security, economic, human rights, and humanitarian situation. Excellencies, to ensure that elections are held as planned and are credible, free, and fair, a number of concrete steps must be urgently taken. First, following the successful conclusion of the update of the voter registry, all efforts should be focused on respecting the key milestones set out in the electoral calendar published by the CENI. Among other pressing issues, the completion of the cleaning of the voter registry is essential for the adoption by Parliament of the law on the distribution of seats, which is an important requirement for the timely holding of the polls. Second, the authorities should fully implement the confidence-building measures envisaged in the 31st of December agreement to help create a conducive environment for peaceful and credible elections. No credible elections can take place in a context of fear and repression. MONUSCO continues its advocacy efforts in this regard, both publicly and in meetings with national authorities. I am encouraged by President Kabila's call to Parliament, expressed at a press conference on the 26th of January in Kinshasa, to examine a bill related to public demonstrations with a view to improving them. It is urgent that members of Parliament heed to the President's call and take up this pressing issue during their March session with the objective of opening democratic space. Third, all stakeholders must work constructively towards a peaceful resolution of their differences and remain determined in their efforts to fully implement the 31st of December agreement, which remains the only viable path out of the current political stalemate. All institutions, political actors, and public figures who have a role to play in the holding of elections must exercise maturity, wisdom, and responsibility while encouraging their supporters to do the same. Leaders of the opposition must join the political and electoral process to ensure that the voices they represent are heard. All efforts should be made to foster and open a transparent dialogue between the key stakeholders of the electoral process. The United Nations remains committed to supporting the electoral process in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. MONUSCO, for its part, has provided its logistical support plan with the CENI as required by the electoral calendar and is ready to make full use of the resources placed at its disposal to implement the mandate it has received from the Security Council. For upcoming elections, the mission is preparing to transport electoral material to 84 hubs and 130 antennas across the country. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in support to Congolese political actors and people, the international community and regional bodies must provide the necessary technical, logistical, and political support to the timely holding of elections leading to democratic transfer of power. It is only by joining our efforts that we can, together, help overcome the political impasse and prepare the ground for credible elections in line with the 31st of December 2016 agreement and the legitimate aspirations of the Congolese people. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Lacroix, and I will now give the floor to the head of CENI, Mr. Corneille Nangaa. Good morning.
Excellency, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, your respective titles and qualities, all protocols observed. On behalf of the Independent National Electoral Commission of the DRC, I'd like to thank the organizers of this meeting for having invited us to take part in this meeting. The electoral process in the Democratic Republic of the Congo will culminate on the 23rd of December of this year with the holding of 3 combined elections by direct universal suffrage. This will be the first time in our history, in accordance with the Global and Inclusive Political Agreement of the Interdiocesan Center of Kinshasa, and the publishing of the electoral timetable. The plan is to hold 3 elections on the same day. Presidential election, which should lead to a democratic transfer of power for the first time after 50 7 years of independence, national legislative elections for the 3rd legislature, and also provincial legislative elections to renew the 26 provincial assemblies and also to renew the Senate and governors in office since 2007. Now, in terms of taking stock of the situation, the facts are the best indication of how the process has evolved. The following activities have been carried out. The electoral mapping of the country has been finalized and an electoral atlas has been produced. On the 5th of November of last year, the electoral calendar was published. On the 25th of November, the administrative and technical process for the acquisition of the AFIS and ABIS system of removing duplicate voters was initiated. The approvals of the competent authorities were obtained in January, and the processing and consolidation of voters' data is underway. This work will ultimately make it possible to comply with the principle of the unique identity of each voter in the electoral register, in line with international standards and norms. Now, on the 24th of December of last year, the electoral law was adopted in Parliament and was promulgated. This law establishes, among other things, the principle of the distribution of seats for all future elections. On the 31st of January of this year, the process of identification and enrollment of voters on the electoral register over the whole national territory was closed. Now, unrefined data statistics indicate 46,057,894 voters registered, of which 52% are women and 52% are men, 48% women. So as you can see, the electoral calendar is being implemented as planned. Now, currently efforts are focused on the following activities. Publication of voter statistics by the various administrative entities. This should be done in the course of April. The adoption and publication of the law on the distribution of seats, the audit of the electoral register to enhance transparency, the convocation or convening of the electorate and registration of the candidates, identification and enrollment of Congolese residing abroad, the acquisition and deployment of sensitive and non-sensitive material, the training and deployment of some 640,000 electoral officers, the electoral campaign, and then the holding of the 3 direct elections on December 23 of 2018 and indirect elections of senators and governors in March of 2019. Now, of course, that said, there's still great challenges to overcome before we reach the goal of December 23rd. And these challenges shall be overcome. They are mainly legal, financial, technical or logistical, security challenges, and political challenges. Now let's look at the legal challenges. The holding of the elections provided for in the electoral calendar, it depends on the long-awaited law on the distribution of seats. That the Electoral Commission also is expecting from the government the list of registered political parties, and on the 26th of March of 2018, the list of the political groupings in accordance with the electoral law. Now, moving on to the financial challenges. Now, the drawing up of the electoral register has cost $400,821,568 This operation was entirely financed by the Congolese government. The initial cost of the 3 combined elections that are to be held on the December 23rd of this year was initially estimated as $554,925,751. Today, that estimate has been reduced to $432,642,693. This estimate was achieved, or this reduction was achieved due to the Electoral Commission deciding to use a device for printing ballots in situ by each elector before putting it into the ballot box. This is a procedure that we're introducing when we're talking about the voting machines. The government is committed to fulfill its obligations in this regard. A disbursement plan has almost been finalized and is being discussed between the Electoral Commission and the government, with a monthly expenditure ranging from $30 to $40 million a month. Now, 3 technical and logistical challenges face us. The operation of identification and enrollment of voters was entirely financed was carried out by the CENI and by MONUSCO. Indeed, 2,260 tons of equipment were deployed from the 3 main hubs, Kinshasa, Lubumbashi, and the port of Mombasa in Kenya. And this was done by MONUSCO, and it was transferred to the 16 logistical hubs of the country. Part of this equipment, the 967 tons, was deployed by MONUSCO to certain training sites from the logistical hubs in the country. Now, the Electoral Commission itself deployed the remaining material from the main sites, from the logistical hubs, and all the material from the training sites to the 17,768 registration centers. And I would like to commend the MONUSCO for its support, estimated at 1/3 of the logistical needs of the operation of revising all the electoral files that we have just completed. Now, with more than 45 million voters, the three combined elections on the same day require the establishment of 23,000 polling centers, which will be split into about 90,000 polling stations. As far as personnel is concerned, more or less 640,000 temporary agents have to be identified, recruited, trained, and assigned with a significant volume of equipment in a country with an inadequate communication infrastructure. The budget adopted by the Electoral Commission takes into account all these electoral operations. The options of using voting machines makes it possible to reduce the weight of all the equipment deployed from 16,000 tons to less than 8,000 tons. UN Security Council Resolution 2348 gives MONUSCO the mandate to provide logistical support for elections in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The ongoing discussions to establish the practical modalities of this support are moving along well. The Independent National Electoral Commission, the CENI, hopes that this support will be effective and that the unfortunate experience of 2011 will not be repeated. Now, moving on to the security challenges. Security obviously has a direct impact on the electoral process. The length of time devoted to drawing up the electoral rolls was due to a large extent on security factors, particularly in the Kasai region. And in this situation, the Electoral Commission lost some 27 agents, 3 of whom were executed by decapitation. So it is very important that a stable security environment be maintained to ensure peaceful, credible, democratic, and transparent elections. Now, as for the political challenges, when we speak of peaceful elections, we obviously, all the political actors and all the stakeholders have committed themselves to this goal. And on examining the facts, one might wonder if some of these stakeholders are actually not working against the elections, completely in contradiction with their daily statements. It is important that the course be definitely maintained for holding the elections on the 23rd of December, and that all actions and schemes should be set aside that tend to sow doubts in the minds of voters about this, achieving this goal. In view of all these elements, the CENI expects support from its partners to achieve the goal of holding elections on the 23rd of December 2018. CENI does not expect to have resistance or negative actions to undermine these efforts, as has often been the case, while highlighting the need for the Independent National Electoral Commission to cooperate with both national and international stakeholders, institutions, and organizations. No one should lose sight of the constitutional principle of the independence of this commission. In the independence, both within the country and vis-a-vis any outside actors. The CENI applaud the fact that discussions of the international group of experts have progressed in this area. Now, based on the good faith of all those involved, and knowing and bearing in mind the technical requirements and separating them from the political strategies, we can be sure of holding the elections as planned on Sunday, December 23rd, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nangaa, for your comments, and I'll now give the floor to Ms. Ida Sawyer from Human Rights Watch. Welcome.
And members of the Security Council, thank you for inviting me to speak today on behalf of Human Rights Watch. Your Excellency Okitundo and President Nangaa, it's an honor to be with you here. On January 21st, security forces shot 24-year-old Therese Kapangala just outside her church in Kinshasa, soon after Sunday Mass. The bullet entered her arm and went to her heart. She died on the way to the hospital. Therese was studying to be a nun and planned to enter a convent in July. She is just one of many Congolese killed as part of the government's brutal campaign to crack down on those speaking out for democracy and fundamental rights in Congo, and to keep one man in power in violation of the country's constitution. On December 31st and January 21st, tens of thousands of Catholic worshippers and others protested across Congo, calling for President Joseph Kabila to abide by the Constitution's two-term limit, allow for new elections, and step down. Security forces responded with unnecessary or excessive force, firing tear gas and live ammunition to disperse crowds, including in some cases by firing within church buildings and on parish grounds. At least 16 people were killed, and scores of others were injured or arrested. The actual number of victims is likely much higher, as security forces took some bodies to unknown locations. Over the past 3 years, President Kabila and those around him have used one delaying tactic after another to postpone elections and entrench their hold on power through brutal repression and large-scale violence, funded through systemic corruption. Security forces shot dead nearly 300 people during political protests. Kabila's ruling coalition has systematically banned demonstrations by the opposition while jailing hundreds of opposition leaders and supporters and human rights and democracy activists. Many have been held in secret detention facilities without charge or access to family members or lawyers. Others have been tried on trumped-up charges. The government has also shut down Congolese media outlets, expelled hard-hitting international journalists and researchers, and periodically curtailed access to the internet and text messaging. A Catholic Church-mediated power-sharing agreement signed on New Year's Eve 2016 provided Kabila an excuse to stay in power another year, but also a commitment to implement confidence-building measures and organize elections by the end of 2017. But instead, these commitments were largely flouted. The new government, the National Follow-up Council, or CNSA, and the Electoral Commission, or CENI, excluded members of the main opposition coalition, while repression and election delays continue. Despite CENI's publication of the electoral calendar in November, Kabila has not demonstrated that he is preparing to step down or create a climate conducive to free, fair, and credible elections. In a rare press conference last month, Kabila refused to say explicitly that he will step down by the end of 2018 or that he will not attempt to run again. Some in Kabila's majority coalition are still talking about a possible referendum or other changes to the electoral process that would allow Kabila to stay in power. Many Congolese civil society groups have called on Kabila to step down immediately and for a citizens' transition to be organized without Kabila that would restore constitutional order and organize credible elections. While Mr. Nangaa has touted the CENI's many accomplishments to date, concerns have already been raised about potential fraud during the voter registration process, with inexplicably high numbers of voters registered in some areas and no independent observation. Many have also expressed concerns that the proposed electronic voting machine will create new opportunities for fraud in the way votes are tallied, and that many Congolese will need to be shown how to use the machine, preventing them from casting a secret ballot. With no transparency and the ruling coalition in control of the entire process, it's no surprise that there is little confidence among Congolese democracy activists and opposition leaders. To make matters worse, well-placed security and intelligence sources have described to Human Rights Watch official efforts to sow violence and instability across much of the country in an apparently deliberate strategy of chaos to justify further election delays. Since August 2016, an outbreak of violence in the central Kasai region left up to 5,000 people dead. Last March, 2 UN investigators, Michael Sharp and Zaida Catalan, were killed while investigating serious human rights abuses in the region. As the Congolese authorities continue to blame members of a local militia and have repeatedly interfered in the Congolese judicial investigation, Human Rights Watch research and Radio France Internationale and Reuters reports suggest government responsibility for the double murders. Large-scale violence has also continued in eastern Congo's North and South Kivu and Tanganyika provinces, and most recently in Ituri province, where interethnic fighting reportedly killed over 30 people earlier this month. Today, over 120 armed groups are active in eastern Congo. Yet the gravest threat to Congolese civilians comes from the security forces meant to protect them. According to the UN Human Rights Office in Congo, some 1,180 people were extrajudicially executed by Congolese state agents in 2017, far more than those killed by any of the armed groups, and a threefold increase over 2 years. The consequences of this violence have been devastating. Nearly 4.5 million people are displaced in Congo today, more than in any other country in Africa. Last October, the United Nations named Congo to its highest Level 3 humanitarian emergency, a category only given to 3 other countries, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Neighboring countries have shown growing concern about the deteriorating situation in Congo and the risks the country's political crisis poses to stability in an already fragile region. As the security forces are themselves fomenting much of the violence in Congo, this has in turn been used as an excuse for election delays. Last July, Mr. Nangaa said that violence in the Kasais was one of the main reasons why elections would not be held in 2017. Just last week, he said the renewed violence in Ituri could have a negative impact on the electoral calendar. While the logistics of organizing elections in Congo are no doubt challenging, the country has managed in the past, both in 2006 and 2011, when Kabila was elected for his first and second terms, despite persistent security threats. What additional excuses can we expect in the coming weeks and months? How many more promises will be broken? And most importantly, how many more Congolese will be killed, injured, and imprisoned as they seek to exercise their basic human rights to peacefully demonstrate, speak out, and freely associate? This Council and UN member states have recognized that a credible and peaceful electoral cycle are crucial for lasting peace and stability in Congo. Many strong declarations have been made and Security Council resolutions have been adopted, insisting first that elections be held by the end of 2016 in accordance with the Congolese Constitution, and then that elections must be held by the end of 2017 in accordance with the New Year's Eve Agreement. The key question today is, what makes this time different? What will convince Kabila and other senior officials that the international community will not tolerate further delays, and that human rights violations against protesters, civil society activists, opposition members, and journalists need to end to allow for a credible, fair, and peaceful process? Further election delays, possible Kabila manipulation of the Constitution to permit a third term, or a fraudulent or violent election will not resolve Congo's underlying problems or bring the country greater peace and stability. Such scenarios need to be avoided. The Security Council, MONUSCO, UN member states, and the African Union have important leverage. Now is the time to use that leverage. First, the Security Council should be clear that December 23, 2018 is the final deadline. In the interim, the Council should be ready to challenge the government if it fails to create an enabling environment, one in which all Congolese are free to express their choice, contest in elections, and protest peacefully. Second, when renewing MONUSCO's mandate, the Security Council should retain strong language on protecting civilians, including in the context of elections. It should also call on DPKO to provide the mission sufficient resources to effectively protect peaceful protesters from unlawful force by Congolese security forces, including by deploying UN police units trained and equipped to work in urban settings. In line with the UN human rights due diligence policy, the Council should ensure that no UN support is given to Congolese security forces responsible for abuses. This might necessitate suspending all joint operations and support to Congolese security forces. Third, clear benchmarks and red lines should be established to determine whether continued human rights violations undermine the enabling environment for planned elections. Such benchmarks could include the deadlines set in the setting calendar, as well as the following measures to open political space: release all arbitrarily detained political prisoners and activists, dropped politically motivated charges against political leaders and activists, and allow those living in exile to return freely, open arbitrarily closed media outlets, allow the political opposition, civil society, and religious leaders to organize political meetings and peaceful demonstrations, and ensure that UN human rights monitors have unhindered access to official and unofficial places of detention, medical facilities, and morgues, cease arbitrary interference with the internet, SMS text messaging, and social media platforms, and ensure transparency in CENI's operations and cooperation with international experts. Fourth,